Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the Metal Magdalene with Jet right here on Metal Messiah Radio. Today we have a special guest with us. We have Erika of the Texas-based metal band Morgengrau. Welcome to the show, Erika.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here and excited to talk to everybody today.
So, Erika, before we get into all the band stuff, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, when did you start becoming interested in metal, and what were some of, like, the first metal albums you purchased? Because it was probably albums back then.
Yes, it absolutely was albums. We had just, I think, gone from 8 tracks to...
I remember.
We got to go way, way back. Let's see. I grew up in the 80s, and some of my earliest memories are listening to metal and rock music. I, of course, went through the requisite being a fan of Kiss phase that every child of the 70s and 80s had to do. I do have all the pictures of me with the face paint on, so that was fun. But I was always attracted to darker music and things in minor key. So when I got into like later grade school and then junior high, things like Ozzy and Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath were available to be heard. You know, people's older brothers and kind of the typical story. Somebody always had an older brother who had albums. And that's really where it started. I got into Iron Maiden. My dad actually liked Iron Maiden, so he would play that, and it was just the way to go. I think the first, well, this is a great one, and because I believe in sharing the truth. The first 2 cassettes that I ever got, because I was doing cassettes at that time, I didn't even have a record player, was Ozzy's Bark at the Moon, and then Michael Jackson's Thriller. So we covered all the bases in between. But I think that what's common between those 2 albums is that it was really good musicianship, and that's always carried me through. I like a variety of music, but you know, we started off with Ozzy, got into Maiden, then Judas Priest, loved Judas Priest. Yeah, I did all the hair metal stuff too. And then as I got to my later teens, I moved into more Metallica, Anthrax, and then got into death metal. And that's pretty much where I stayed. And I was in the Western New York area when Buffalo was exploding with bands like Cannibal Corpse and Baphomet. And so, went to all those shows, and that was really from whence I sprang. That's how I came to be.
So what was the first metal show that you actually saw, Erika?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. Let me think. A formally metal show, and I think about rock and roll shows, but we'll scrub those out. Like a real underground death metal show would have been at the River Rock Cafe. Likely would have had Cannibal Corpse on it before they even had their first demo out. Probably with another band called Mehemesis. It was Mehemesis, Baphomet, and Cannibal Corpse were the big bands in the time, in Buffalo in that time. So it would have been one of those tiny little wild shows where people were just crammed in the pit, and it was chaos, and it was about 1,000 degrees in the club. And it was just amazing. I was at the Dark Angel show where Cannibal Corpse, I think it was their very first show, and that was amazing. So yeah, I went to so many gigs in those times. It's hard to remember which was the first one because you're getting kicked in the head constantly. You kind of come out and you're in a fog.
Well, it's funny too that you mentioned that because back then there was no regulation. There was maybe, if even, one security guy who was the same guy that was the bouncer, and God, anything went. And everybody always left those shows bloody and bruised but happy.
Yes, there was no fighting, which is interesting because people were beating the crap out of each other, just moshing, and folks would stage dive in these tiny clubs. They'd be hitting the ceiling and then hitting the top of the crowd. There was a fantastic show I went to. It was Malevolent Creation, and then Cannibal, and then a punk rock band that had these fantastic giant Liberty Spike hairdos.
Oh boy!
And by the end of the show, all the punk rocker, all their hairdos were beaten flat because they've been just getting pounded. And then all of the acoustical tile in the ceiling of the VFW club where the bands were playing was kicked out.
Oh, no.
So because everybody had been, and let's just say there was never a show there again. We destroyed the inside of that venue. It was great.
Yeah, the good old days. Now, when did you start, like, playing guitar, and was that your first instrument that you ever played?
Yes, guitar was my first instrument. I started playing when I was 13. I played for a few years in my teens, and then I actually put it down for almost 25 years. I'm not a great guitarist, I fully admit it, which I think to me makes me focus more on songwriting, because I can't play all the crazy riffs, and, you know. But, yeah, I enjoyed playing it. I picked it back up in 2009. I was at a club show here in Austin, and there's a band on stage, and they were just making just a holy mess. I don't think anybody knew how to play their instruments, and it was just a disaster. But what struck me is everybody on stage was having a great time, and everybody in the crowd was having a great time. I was like, why am I worried about being great when I could just be decent, get up there and have a good time, and maybe write some cool songs, and people would enjoy it. And so that was kind of my, threshold moment for deciding I should go pick guitar back up again and stop just being a singer and just move into doing guitar as well.
And it's like you said, have a great time doing it makes a big difference.
Yes, it does. Why else would we do it? There certainly isn't any money in it.
That is absolutely true. So who are some of, like, your vocal inspirations, Erika?
Vocal inspirations. I've taken bits and pieces from just about everybody. Really grew up listening to a lot of Heart with Ann Wilson, who has an incredible voice and amazing control. Listening to a lot of her. Who else? Well, it's the greats, Bruce Dickinson, Lonnie James Dio, and Rob Halford. Because for those who don't know me, I actually do a bunch of cover bands as well. So I was in an Iron Maiden cover band for a while, and then I was in a Ronnie James Dio band, and now I'm doing Scorpions. So I still get to use kind of my more power metal, heavy metal singing style that was how I first originally started doing albums. But then as I decided to really do more of what was the music that I really wanted to do, which was death metal, I can't really say that I was inspired by any one particular person, just really trying to hone my vocal style so that I could get it as deep as possible and still have a lot of variety and dynamic. And I look at vocalists like P. Bowman from Demolich, who has this insane, almost like throat singing style, and trying to just get even a little bit of that and parts of what I do to add variety and just really try to push my voice and do different and unique things with it.
And now going from power metal type vocals to death metal vocals, and if you were teaching yourself this, did you ever like throw your voice out or injure anything going on in there?
Well, luckily I never injured anything really badly. I used to blow myself out when I was in my power metal band Igniter. I just kill myself on stage doing that vocal style. It's much, much harder for me to do the more heavy metal vocal style than it is to do the death metal vocals. I don't know why. There's just something that's technique-wise a little easier. I can do the deeper growling vocals for hours and still talk the next day. But, I never ended up with the nodes on the vocal cords. That was like the most fearful thing growing up, reading magazine articles about Klaus Meine from the Scorpions and how his career was almost ended. He had to get surgery, and there's just tons of news about that when that happened. And I remember reading that, going, "Oh my God, I never want that to happen to me." So I always tried to be a bit careful, and really use good technique, good breath control, good diaphragm control, so we don't end up zeroing myself, because that's one of my most important instruments, and I need to keep it healthy.
So, Erika, when did you start Morgengrau, and why did you want to start this band?
So I started jamming with Reba Carls, who was the original drummer for Morgengrau, in 2011. And we just wanted to get together and jam some tunes. We started doing just cover tunes, playing stuff that we liked, like Asphyx and Pestilence and the old classics from back in the day. And, it was just something to do. And, you know how it goes. You start jamming, and then you write a couple riffs, and next thing you know, you have a song, and then you realize, oh, well, what if we got a bassist? Then we could have a whole band, and then you get a second guitarist. And that's really what happened. Is in 2012, we brought in Jake Holmes on bass and Nick Norris on guitar, and immediately started sitting down and writing original songs with the idea that we would put out an album and just be a band. And it really just came together very organically and naturally. And then we released Extrinsic Pathway, which is our first CD in 2013. And as we were releasing that, we were already writing for what became Blood Oracle. And that's really how it went. I mean, we played a bunch of gigs, and right at the moment we're not playing live because we don't have a drummer. Reba had to leave the band because of she had to go to school and had a lot of family life obligation things. And brought in a couple other drummers on session. And so right now we're trying to decide whether or not we really do want to continue to play live. Because like I said earlier, it's got to be fun. And playing live for me has become something not 100% fun. Really because in Austin here, we're the live music capital of the world as long as you'll play for free. Which means, it's not that and I'm not in it for the money, but it is nice to at least have the show, the clubs try to make it so that they compensate the bands a little bit, and it's just challenging, to just drag all your stuff and get on stage and play, and then the people come out, and so I'm kind of just taking a step back from that right now. There's plenty of other bands who are a little hungrier and who want to do that, and they keep the scene really fresh here in Austin, and so, that's awesome for them. I'm just going to kind of take a step back and think about what I want to do, and just concentrate on doing the promotion and getting Blood Oracle out in front of as many people as possible so that they can enjoy what we've been working on for the last 4 years.
And that's going to be, Blood Oracle will be officially released on June 22nd. So, Erika, tell us how you approached this album musically.
That's a great question because I don't really have a particular approach that I use. The album arose from, basically a couple songs that we started with, and I realized that they were linked together by kind of a conceptual theme. And they both stylistically were a bit different from what we did in Extrinsic Pathway. They were more locked into the northern European style of death metal, kind of the Finnish feel of bands like Demolich, Demigod. So I wanted to really stay in that pocket and focus on that. And so we just worked very carefully to weed out any riffs that didn't fit into that theme, and then just refine and stay on point. The concept that flows through the album continued to develop into what it finally is now, which is this fantastical story of a creature called the Steward of the Bone, and this battle that's going on in the land in which this entity lives. And so it was basically one of the reasons why it took so long is there was just so much editing and weeding out of stuff that wasn't going to work, that didn't make sense, that was either too thrashy or too doomy. And so just to really get what I call the Goldilocks principle, which is just right, we just took our time. And, luckily we live in the day and age where we do have the luxury of time. You don't have a record label breathing down your neck going, you have to get it done in 6 months.
Right.
And I'm very happy with the result. And I hope as people listen to the album that they feel that focus and that consistency that we worked so hard to put into it.
And now lyrically, you had mentioned a little bit about the theme of the album. So where the heck did you get this theme from, Erika?
So it's very interesting because the album lyrics have 2 or 3 different levels of meaning. So the listener will get at least the top level, the surface level of meaning, which is the story. And then there'll be their own personal meaning that they apply to it. You know, when you write lyrics that are first person, when you listen to them, you do tend to apply them to yourself, or to what you're experiencing, and that becomes customized to your own internal narrative. And to me, that's very, very important because the things that have stuck with me over the years, the songs that really stick with me are the ones that came from somebody else's own personal narrative, yet I was able to integrate them into mine. Deicide's first album being one of the standouts. So many of those songs are like first person, so you can just grab onto that and you have those feelings and you become kind of one with the music. So that's an important kind of second level of meaning that's hidden in the album. And then there's the meaning that I know what it really is. And that's something that is just personal to me and will stay personal to me. The clues are there as to what it really means. It's all in the lyrics. It's actually in the visuals. Someone who's clever enough could figure it out. And so I'm kind of throwing it out there. That's the challenge, is if somebody can tell me what the actual real true third meaning of the album is, then I will have to think of some amazing prize person because they will absolutely deserve it, but it's really there. And I studied literature in college, and some of the books that I found the most interesting were the ones that meant one thing on the surface, but then had a whole other layer of meaning underneath. And that gave such richness to that work and such interest to it. And I wanted to take a little bit of that concept and put it into this music.
Now you're going to get a million messages from people saying, could it be this? Is it this?
That's great. You want to know why that's great? It's because people will be thinking.
That's true.
People need to think more. We need to consume less and think more. And really just dig in to artwork, into literature, and instead of just reading it and putting it aside and going on to the next thing in the very ADHD world that we live in. Back in, when you and I were kids, you got an album, and that was probably the only album you were going to buy for 2 months. You didn't have any other money, So you got that Morbid Angel, Vultures of Madness, or you got that Pestilence Consuming Impulse, or Asphyx the Rack, and you sat with the damn thing, and you stared at the album cover, and you read all the lyrics, and you memorized the lyrics, and you just integrated it and spent time with it. And I don't think we spend enough time with things now. And so if I can get one person to spend more time with my album than they would with somebody else's, and to just really think about it a little bit, then that's a big success.
And now you were mentioning, which is very true, that's exactly what we used to do, stare at that album cover while the music was playing. So tell us now, is your album going to come out on vinyl?
That's the plan. We have to do all the logistics with it, but and I don't want to put the album out on vinyl right at the same time when the CD comes out because people have to make choices. So I do want to put it out. I want to put the first one out on vinyl too. It's just a matter of budget. But we enlisted Nick Keller from Weta Studios out in New Zealand to do that album cover for Blood Oracle, and I really want to get it out there in a larger format so people can see it and appreciate it because he did an unbelievable job. He took all the concepts, he listened to some of the demos of the songs, and he just nailed it. He nailed it so hard, and it's such a beautiful painting, and I want people to be able to sit with it, hold it in their hands, and stare at it while they listen to the music.
Which is exactly why I asked you, because you can still sit with a CD, but it's not the same, it's not that. And the art is beautiful, and I was going to ask you about the cover art and the artist, but you had just mentioned it to us. to have the big version in your hands without that plastic cover thing on there that makes it so sterile to me. I always rip the plastic covers off even my CDs too, because I want to see the paper, without all that sterile glare and everything. But we're hoping it comes out on vinyl, because that's exactly the kind of experience. It's nice. And it's like you said too, when we were young, there was nowhere near the influx of bands, metal bands, a bajillion different kind of genres and all this crazy shit that's going out now, that we were kind of savoring the moment with these albums that we bought. And some back when I was a kid, I would buy albums. Sometimes I didn't even know what the hell I was buying. I was buying them for the album covers, and I would, this is such a cool.
Yeah, I mean, that was how we would go and pick albums. I would go to this store called Record Town in the mall, when malls were actually places that people went, and not kind of these derelict things that they've become.
Right.
And so we would all get together and we'd pile into the car, and we'd go to Record Town, and we'd run to the cut bin, because that's where all the metal albums were, because we didn't sell. And so they'd be $5 a piece. And we'd be like, no, that one looks stupid. No, shit, that one looks amazing. And the album might be terrible, but the cover looks so badass. And I'm not going to make any friends with this particular story, but I remember picking out one of the Holy Terror albums. And I was like, this cover is so cool. And I got home and I hated it. I hated it, and I still don't like Holy Terror. And I'm sorry to people who disagree with me, but I just never could get into them. But I still think that the covers were so cool.
They still had a cool cover. Well, I can remember listening, buying a lot of like Black Sabbath albums out of there, and being like, the one with the fighter pilots, and I'm like, I gotta have it. I think I only like 2 songs on that one, but I love that album. I love Johnny Blade, and I could remember sitting there staring at that, thinking that was so badass, And it's kind of unfortunate that a lot of people, probably unless they're like my age, don't really get that same excitement and feeling, because they just are so bombarded. I mean, I know everybody has favorite metal bands and they love metal, but it was like a whole different feeling, because you weren't bombarded back then with so much. It's crazy when I think of it now. Between now and over 20 years ago, the amount of metal that is available to people blows my mind.
Yeah, it really is, and we're in this. It's kind of like if you had taken us when we were teenagers and said, someday there will be a future where metal is readily available. There are 1,000 choices available to you all at one time. It's almost in a way somewhat mainstream. You'll walk down the street, you'll see a Slayer T-shirt, without even, having to look hard. And you go, oh my God, that sounds like utopia. But it's kind of gone way past utopia and into, it's like overstimulation now,
right,
because there are so many metal bands. So that was one of the things I really was thinking hard about when I was writing the album, which is people consume music like they consume social media, which is if it's more than 3 lines long, they're not reading further. They're moving on to the next thing. So I got to make every one of these songs count.
Right.
The album has to stand alone on every individual song and as a whole, because there may be somebody who only listens to one song, and if they listen to one song and they like it, and then they move on to something else, well then that's great too. I would love it if they would want to spend more time with the album, but I also understand people. Our brains have become designed to just, take a bite and then swallow and then move on to next. And I don't necessarily think that's great for people, but it is the way folks move through media nowadays, and we have to figure out how to adjust to it.
All right, and you really can't say too much otherwise, because a lot of people grew up in this generation as this is how metal music has been available to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't know what it's like, and you can't be that old fart that's like, well, back in the day. They don't even want to hear that either, so they're not interested.
Even though I 100% am that old fart,
so am I.
And I sit there and I'm like, well, first off, I'm sitting because I can't stand anymore. I'm like sitting in the back in a chair, and people are walking by, and I'm going, wow, this is really cool that I'm get off my lawn, people into the club, because, I can remember being fascinated by folks who are a bit older who would come to shows like at the Sky Room in West Seneca back in the late 80s. There's a gentleman who we called him Evil Eye, and he was an older dude, and he was always there. He was at all the shows. He'd sit by the bar, he'd have his drinks, he'd dig the music, and then he'd go off and I think he was a school teacher. And we were so fascinated by him because it's like he was this weird unicorn sitting at the bar, and all the rest of us were 16 years old. And we're like, will we be like that when we're that age? And so many of us have ended up like that. But I do think it's really important to appreciate that, yes, younger people, they enjoy metal, but they have a completely different experience of how they take in music and information, and you have to be cognizant of that.
You've become Evil Eye.
Yes, I have.
So Eric,
damn it.
if people want to learn more about the band, what's going on, that kind of thing, what are the best sites for them to go to?
They can look for us on Bandcamp. That's the best place to kind of keep up on the first release. And then if you look for just Morgengrau on Bandcamp, you'll find our Bandcamp. You'll also find Unspeakable Acts on Bandcamp. That's our record label. So you'll be able to buy the album through the Unspeakable Acts Bandcamp. Look us up on Facebook, and you will occasionally see posts when I remember to post on Facebook. So yeah, we'll keep people appraised of news about the band and what things are happening. Particularly if we're going to be bringing stuff out on vinyl, we'll post that up on Facebook, and that's really the best way. We don't really do Twitter, and what the hell should we do with Instagram and more pictures of cats? And I mean, you can find my Instagram, and you'll see pictures of cats, selfies of me, and lots of pictures of old cars, and that's about it. So use the old Facebook for keeping up with Morgengrau, and that'll get everybody the info they need.
All right, well, Erika, I'm going to let you get going now. Morgengrau's new album, Blood Oracle, going to be out on June 22nd. And thank you so much for taking the time out to come on the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your album, and all the best of luck to you.
Thank you very much, and have a great day. I really appreciate it.